Millions of square miles of soil are melting right beneath our feet. Permafrost is thawing, and it could be enough to destroy some of our cities. Meanwhile, in places like Norway, stunning inlets called fjords have been formed through millions of years of ice movement. Our planet is full of terrifying, beautiful, and mysterious forces, and it's our job to uncover them. I'm going to start this trip through the ancient unexplained by checking out some eye-opening artifacts, beginning with this one. Loki lives. Some of you may think this is just a character from Marvel Comics. However, Loki also exists as a figure in Old Norse mythology. This particular image of him wasn't found on Disney+, but on a belt buckle discovered at the Viking settlement of Ugar in Denmark. It's thought to be the first Loki-based artifact uncovered here, with others found only in Sweden, according to reports at the time from 2017. I should also mention that depictions of Loki have reportedly been seen in Norway. These things are tough to verify, and with good reason. The mischievous and disruptive Loki is a legend, so it's not possible to say whether he actually existed. And if he did, what form he took. There are even doubts the find in Denmark could be a representation of him in the first place. Either way, it's a tantalizing mystery. When it comes to life on Earth, humans are barely scratching the surface. Deep underneath the ground, and I'm talking more than 3.5 miles down, there is a subterranean oasis. Researchers from the Deep Carbon Observatory have spent an entire decade collecting samples from this deep biosphere. Dubbed the Subterranean Galapagos, this area is double the size of every ocean and is home to the majority of our planet's bacteria. Down there, microbial life has evolved to withstand enormous pressure and extreme temperatures, which opens up the possibility of life existing almost anywhere. With a tiny octopus whose venom is powerful enough to kill 26 people in minutes and has no known antidote. The blue-ringed octopus looks cartoonishly cute. Tiny, colorful, almost too harmless to be dangerous. But if those blue rings start flashing, you're in serious trouble. This little thing carries venom so powerful, one bite has enough toxin to kill 26 people, and there is no antidote. The worst part? You won't even feel the bite. The venom shuts down your nervous system, leaving you paralyzed and unable to breathe. If you're not on a ventilator fast, there's nothing doctors can do. As terrifying as that is, the blue-ringed octopus isn't the only deadly creature waiting for you in the ocean. The hallucigenia. The name sounds like a fever dream, and honestly, it's kind of accurate. This cutter looked like a worm that got itself tangled in a cactus. Imagine a tiny worm with ridiculously thin legs jutting out everywhere and with rows of sharp spikes running along its back like some medieval knight's armor. This is definitely not the worm they were trying to gobble down in How to Eat Fried Worms. This extinct spiky spaghetti noodle was strutting through the oceans roughly 508 million years ago during the Cambrian period. For decades, scientists had a full-on what the heck is this moment before figuring out which way it was up, where its head was, and how it was supposed to walk. Ancient Egypt left behind some amazing looking artifacts and structures for us to marvel at. Trouble is, we can only make educated guesses as to what exactly was going on back then. The Saqqara bird is an example of this enduring mystery. It dates back approximately 2,200 years. Remember the old Superman line, "Is it a bird? Is it a plane?" Yeah, well, that's precisely the dilemma which has faced experts since the wooden figurine was recovered in the late 1800s. Due to the design, which is sort of like a glider, people believe the figurine represents some kind of ancient Egyptian aircraft. Prototypes have even been built with mixed results. Others are certain the Saqqara bird is a toy or similar object. We simply don't know for sure. The inner core is the beating heart of Earth's body. It makes up about 1/5 of Earth's volume and is 30% smaller than the Moon. But with an average temperature of over 9,000 degrees, it's also an engine of activity. It helps to create the magnetic field of the planet, giving Earth an invisible layer of protection from the radiation shooting towards us through space. The stonefish is the most venomous fish in the world, and quite possibly the grumpiest looking one too. These guys blend perfectly into the sea floor, making them almost impossible to spot until it's too late. Step on one, and 13 razor-sharp spines will inject venom straight into your foot. The pain is unreal. Victims have compared it to getting hit repeatedly with a sledgehammer, as the venom causes swelling, necrosis, paralysis, and in severe cases, death. Luckily, there is an anti-venom for this one. And fun fact, it's the second most administered in Australia. Some ocean creatures prefer to stay hidden, but others will make you regret even getting in the water. Ready to meet another one of the ocean's OG Stranger Things? Let's talk about the Anomalocaris. This prehistoric giant shrimp monster is also from the Cambrian period and is believed to be able to grow a full meter long, so about the size of a baseball bat. Instead of a kinda sorta cute shrimp face though, it had a circular mouth full of teeth that looked like a spinning saw. Fine, as you may have already guessed, it was a predator, but its mouth saw isn't the only way it killed its prey. Its front limbs were long and spiny, which made them perfect for grabbing anything that moved. And its bug-bulging eyes gave it a full 360-degree view of everything around it. On top of that, it was a particularly graceful swimmer, so it would glide through the water instead of flopping around like the shrimp we see today. The only downside? It was fragile. There was a time when scientists thought of it as the T-Rex of the time, but in reality, it would have shattered when it encountered hard shells. Sticking to the aviation theme, here are some elaborately designed gold objects from ancient Egypt. Some think they show animals. Others believe they show a surprisingly sophisticated aircraft design from 500 CE. These so-called trinkets have the archaeological community scratching their heads. Speaking of magnetic waves, a new kind has been detected by satellites over more than 2 decades and combined with computer simulations. This wave only appears every 7 years and has been called the Magnetocoriolis wave. As we know, magnetic waves help provide a shield for the planet, and they're generated through the conductivity of liquid metal contained in the outer layer of the Earth's core. As it swirls and swishes around, electric currents are created, and with it, magnetism. The new waves that have been discovered interact with this liquid in the outer core, but it's too early to know exactly how. The box jellyfish live in tropical waters near Asia and Australia, but some species have been spotted as far away as California. These things can grow up to 10 feet long, and just one carries enough venom to kill 60 adults. The sting is excruciating, with toxins that attack the heart, nervous system, and skin all at once. Some victims go into cardiac arrest in less than 5 minutes before they even reach the shore. Vinegar can help prevent more venom from being released, but you still need to find a hospital. Fast. Otherwise, it's a race against time, and the jellyfish usually wins. However, in the world of deadly stings, this next creature takes things up a notch. One of the other odd creatures that lived through the Cambrian period is the Opabinia. If evolution had a "let's see how weird we can get" button, this creature would be the result. It truly looked like something out of a sci-fi flick. Let's start with its eyes. No, not 2. It had 5. Yeah, 5 eyes perched on little stalks all over its head, giving it a true panoramic view with no blind spots. Ever. Does that sound cute? Sure. But it gets worse. The showstopper of this monster is its long, flexible trunk-like appendage. Aw, it's adorable. A wee little elephant with 5 eyes. Wrong. At the end of that trunk weren't little nose holes, it was a claw. This built-in grabber was great for snatching food up from the ocean floor while it wiggled around. Horrific. But even worse is that its mouth faced backwards. This freak of nature used to chill in the Burgess Shale in British Columbia, which was a hotspot for experimental creatures. Batteries are thought to be a relatively modern invention, but did they exist thousands of years ago? This is the intriguing question thrown out by the Baghdad battery. It was found in the late 1930s by Wilhelm König, an archaeologist from Germany. He uncovered the so-called battery to the southeast of Baghdad, Iraq. From the outside, it looks like a 6-inch high clay pot, but peek inside and you'll see a sheet made of copper, which is rolled up and contains a rod of iron. Why do people think this bizarre yet fascinating object is a battery? Because you can use it to generate electricity, albeit around a volt's worth. You do this by pouring an acidic liquid, such as vinegar, into the vessel, though nothing too strong. The mild acid reacts with the copper and iron, enabling you to power an incredibly small car. I made up the bit about the car. Mysterious artifacts are often found at sites of historical interest. For example, the Baghdad battery was discovered within range of Ctesiphon, a city that used to be part of ancient Iran. Let's take a look at some other staggering locations where people a lot like us used to live, work, and love. Picture Antarctica and what comes to mind? Plenty of snow, maybe some mountains, huge sheets of ice, right? Well, underneath, there are also flowing rivers. And not just one or two, an entire system of them. The rivers eventually found their way to the Weddell Sea in the Southern Ocean. One of these networks is about the same size as Egypt and is located underneath a group of 4 floating ice sheets. If this ice were to melt all at once, then the world's oceans would rise more than 4 meters. Knowing exactly where Antarctica's below ice rivers are is crucial for scientists to predict how much and how fast ice is melting. The Indian red scorpion is the most dangerous scorpion in the world and can be found in crowded areas of India, Pakistan, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. Its sting is brutal, leading to sweating, vomiting, convulsions, and blackouts. If untreated, the venom shuts down the heart and lungs, causing pulmonary edema and death. On top of everything else, it can also cause priapism, which is basically one of the most painful ways to go. There is antivenom, but it barely works, so it's best to avoid these little nightmares altogether. But when it comes to deadly surprises, mollusks might just take the crown. This next oddity was one of the ocean's ultimate predators. It's the Zophanctinus. Jokingly called the prehistoric piranha, this hungry man could grow up to 20 feet long and devour prey its own size in one bite. In fact, it's believed this monstrosity would swallow its victim whole without a second thought. How do we know that? Scientists have fossils that reveal stomachs containing entire fish that were just as big as themselves. These baddies lived in the late Cretaceous period around 70 million years ago and are believed to be a survival of the fittest superstar. Don't be afraid though. They are well and truly extinct, and we don't have to worry about ending up part of the food chain. This limestone oddity looks like it was made by human hand. Instead, it seems nature created the extraordinary geological site. That's the theory anyway. No one can say for certain how the Patolm crater came to be. It measures 520 feet across and is nearly 140 feet high. Named after the local feature of the Patolm River in chilly Siberia, it keeps the natural world at bay. Because it sticks out and has an intimidating otherworldly vibe, it's also earned the name Fire Eagle's Nest. The crater isn't especially ancient and apparently dates back approximately several hundred years. We first laid eyes on it in 1949 with geologist Vadim Kolpakov from Russia spotting the awesome chunk of rock. Natural explanations for the crater include an explosion of steam caused by activity below the surface. Not so natural explanations include UFO phenomena. Big surprise, right? Personally, I think it looks like a giant belly button. Like, maybe from a monster from a Ray Harryhausen movie went for a lie down and passed away before the forest grew around them. I might be reaching there. It's not only Antarctica where huge bodies of water are showing up. About 700 kilometers underground, in the mantle layer, there is a reservoir. This isn't just a small amount of liquid either. If the Earth's oceans were drained, there'd be enough water in here to fill all of them 3 times over. Importantly, this has changed a fundamental theory about how water first ended up on our planet. A popular idea has been that comets colliding with Earth at some point brought some water with them. But the huge reservoir points to water slowly trickling from underneath up to the surface. There are cone snails with venom powerful enough to kill 20 adults. And I know you don't want to hear this, but it's very easy for their harpoon-like tooth to go through wetsuits. These little guys live in warm tropical waters, and while a sting from a small one might feel like nothing more than a bee sting, a sting from a big one? Deadly. The venom causes vision loss, paralysis, respiratory failure, and death. And there is no antivenom. Fortunately, cone snails don't create weapons on purpose, unlike us. You know what? Enough with the ocean for now. Let's go inland and check out a feathered friend that would make Big Bird look meek. I'm talking about the elephant bird. Like Big Bird, this guy was a giant flightless bird. Unlike Big Bird, this guy roamed more than one neighborhood and lived in Madagascar about 1,000 years ago. Standing at 3 meters tall and weighing around half a ton, you wouldn't want to play hide and seek with this fine fella. Nevertheless, it wasn't a predator, nor did it hunt. It spent the day living a slow and steady life, munching on plants, fruits, and seeds. Isn't that the dream? Their claim to fame doesn't come from the bird itself, but actually from the eggs. They were over 30 centimeters long, and one was big enough to make an omelet that could literally feed more than 100 people. Why did they go extinct after lasting so long? People. That's why. We overhunted these feathered friends so much that we destroyed their species and their habitat. You may not know what a geoglyph is, but you've probably seen one. They're usually photographed from the air and are typically shaped like people or animals. They can be made out of putting objects down, like rocks. Or instead of putting things down, you can take them away. What do I mean? Well, a good example of this is the Nazca lines in Peru. Dating back to between 500 BCE and 500 CE, the Nazca artist has used the landscape as their canvas. The lines are white because that's the color of the ground when you pick up the pebbles which cover it. Various forms of life, lines, and shapes are presented, though to this day a proper explanation hasn't been found for why the lines are there. Not all of Earth's mysteries are hidden underground. Some of them are on the surface, and some of them you can even access through public data. Baker Lake in Nunavut, Canada is a place that has attracted attention for potentially a cover-up. When you find the small town of just over 2,000 on Google Maps, the satellite image has what appears to be a blacked-out rectangle in one spot. For some conspiracy-minded folks, it's evidence of extraterrestrial beacons. Despite the name, mustard gas is not something you want anywhere near your favorite foods. The yellow-brown chemical smells like mustard or horseradish, but don't let it fool you. It is a weapon designed to make you suffer. Developed by German scientists in World War I, it penetrates through clothing, leaving victims with blistered skin, scorched lungs, and chemical burns. Those who survived attacks were usually left blind, disfigured, or battling cancer for the rest of their lives. But mustard gas isn't the only poison that leaves a lasting mark. Have you ever looked at an armadillo and thought, wow, that's cute. I wonder what it would look like as a giant? Well, if so, today is your day. Back before Ross Geller was the holiday armadillo, about 10,000 years ago, we did have giant armadillos rolling around on Earth. And when I say giant, I mean massive. The ancient armadillo grew to 10 feet long. Named the Glyptodon, this was the ultimate prehistoric tank of the animal kingdom. But it wasn't exactly dangerous. It was a prey animal that relied on its side and fortress-like shell to keep them safe while they munched on leaves and plants and moved slowly from place to place. Much like the elephant birds, it's believed humans are the reason these fellows are no longer with us. They weren't only hunted for their meat, but for their suit of armor too. It's easy to think of ancient historical sites as faraway places. Some, however, are quite close to home. If you're in the US, you'll want to know about the site dubbed Mystery Hill, which is located in the decidedly non-exotic area of New Hampshire. Composed of stone structures such as walls and caves, the hill has managed to boggle the minds of those who visit. Is it a megalithic stargazing platform built by Native Americans some 4,000 years ago? Or is it more recent? Some believe it was put up as late as the 19th century. Not so fun fact, the place is situated in Salem, the famous home of witches and those who persecuted them. That makes it rather sinister. Mystery Hill is also compared to the ancient location of Stonehenge in the UK. For that reason, it's called America's Stonehenge. If only Spinal Tap knew about this place. Earth may have survived for 4.5 billion years, but man-made climate change is shaking things up dramatically. That's what the idea of planetary stewardship is all about. Responsibly managing the Earth and life on it while finding a balance between taking resources and maintaining the health of nature. The best approach is to reproduce the ways that the planet deals with waste and pollution, like through recycling, green energy, and creating more carbon sinks. Strychnine comes from the dog button plant, and when extracted, it's colorless, bitter, and ridiculously toxic. Back in the 1800s, athletes actually used it like caffeine for a little energy boost, until they found out the hard way that it shuts down the nervous system, locks up the muscles, and makes it impossible to breathe. These days, it's mostly used in rat poison and pesticides, but some drug dealers cut their heroin with it to make the effects, get this, smoother. Now tell me, would you be able to spot a poisonous mushroom? Have you ever looked at your Halloween decorations and thought, yeah, I'd love to add in something super weird that looks like a fun mix of a rhino and a mastodon with a set of fangs? Well, I have more great news for you. Look no further than the giant rhino. These guys looked fearsome indeed. Hailing from the Eocene epoch approximately 56 million years ago, these guys had skulls topped with large bony knobs that are thought to be used not just to fight rivals, but to show off. The spikes in their long saber-like canine teeth had them looking quite fierce, even though they were gentle giants. Those fangs weren't used to dig into the flesh of their enemies. They used them to strip vegetation like a prehistoric salad. An interesting fact about them is that they're thought to be one of the first giant mammals, truly a real heavy hitter of its time. Adorable. This bizarre feature has been capturing people's imagination since 2008. Found on Reeks Island in the Pacific Rim National Park Reserve in Canada, the face, or what looks like one, was spotted by someone passing by in a kayak. It doesn't look like anyone has gotten close enough to the approximately 7-foot high piece of rock to make a definitive assessment. That makes it difficult to establish whether it's been created by humans or by natural forces. There's also a possible link to the Tsishaat First Nation of tribes, who have a long-standing presence in the area. Just like the cycle of food going into your body and being converted into energy, the Earth has a cycle too. Only it's infinitely more intricate and complex. It's called the biogeochemical cycle. Zooming from the outside in, the environment, species, animals, chemicals, and microbes are all constantly moving through cycles. For part of that cycle, there'll be inside living creatures like horses, whales, and even humans. But that's only for a relatively short amount of time before the chemicals return to the environment, either in the atmosphere, the soil, the ocean, or anything in between. The death cap mushroom looks harmless. Some might even say it looks kind of tasty. But it will probably be your last meal. These mushrooms contain amatoxins, which quietly shut down your liver and kidneys. The worst part is, you won't feel sick right away. Symptoms take 6 to 12 hours, starting with vomiting and diarrhea, followed by a false recovery, and then suddenly, organ failure. There's no true antidote, and without a liver transplant, death is almost guaranteed. So if you're in the mood for mushrooms, well, stick to the grocery store. And while you're at it, don't go snacking on wildflowers either. Arguably, one of the most adorable animals on the planet is the sloth. I'm sure on that we can all agree. Do you think they'd still be adorable if they stretched over 20 feet long and weighed almost as much as an elephant? Would it be extra cute, or would that become super scary? That's what they looked like 10,000 years ago. This creature was so enormous that it would make today's sloths look like pocket pets. Unlike the tree-hugging sloths we know and love today, the giant ground sloth was a ground dweller. Hence the name. It didn't need to climb trees to get a tasty leafy treat. When it was craving a snack, it would just stand up and use its huge claws to strip vegetation. Unfortunately, like most other animals of its time, its extinction is due to the changing climate, and of course, people hunting it for sport. Another mysterious site made from stone is Göbekli Tepe in southeast Turkey. The name translates as Belly Hill. It was first discovered in the 1990s by Klaus Schmidt, an archaeologist from Germany. The carvings here, which are also thought to resemble Stonehenge, reportedly date back around 11,000 years. It features T-shaped pillars, and the material used was limestone, like the plateau it rests on. Stone tools were also found. Hunter-gatherers living in the pre-pottery Neolithic period appear to have built the structures, and their actual purpose has been lost to the mists of time. It's a safe bet to assume there was some religious activity motivating the construction of Göbekli Tepe. Klaus Schmidt believed that rituals were performed there, and evidence of people living on the site has also been uncovered in recent times. It's one of the oldest examples of its kind on the planet. We hear a lot about greenhouse gas emissions in the atmosphere, but what about the oceans? They're affected just as much. In fact, almost 1/3 of all those emissions end up in the ocean, making the water much more acidic. This has a chain reaction, making it more difficult for animals like oysters to build shells, eroding coral reefs, and destroying the habitats of marine life. Wolfsbane, also known as monkshood, is a plant so toxic it's been called the queen of poisons. In fact, it's the same stuff our ancestors used to put on their spears and arrow tips, so it definitely kills. Every part of it, from the roots to the petals, is packed with aconitin, a neurotoxin that can have disastrous effects on your body fast. Touch it, and it will be absorbed through your skin. Eat it, just a tiny bit will kill you in a matter of hours. Symptoms hit quickly: tingling, vomiting, a racing heart, before full paralysis and cardiac arrest. Anyway, plants aren't the only things on today's list that'll kill you. We've also got poisonous minerals. Sloths aren't the only cuties who used to come supersized like McDonald's fries. Bunnies used to be a whole lot bigger too. Around 4 million years ago, you wouldn't see your average house bunny hopping around. Instead, these rabbits weighed up to 12 kilograms, so the size of your average medium breed dog. Living on the island of Menorca, these hoppers weren't exactly built for speed like their current counterparts, nor did they have long ears or sharp senses. These guys were bigger, had shorter ears, smaller eyes, a stockier build, and they were clumsy. These slow grazers were more of an oversized couch potato than the garden rabbits we have hopping away from danger at lightning speed, because they didn't need to. They lived on an island where they were fairly isolated, and their survival didn't depend on speed, strength, or wit. The Ica stones came into the public eye care of Dr. Javier Cabrera Darquea. His collection of artifacts numbered over 1,000, and had a surprising beginning. Back in the 1930s, the good doctor was approached by a farmer in Peru. He held out a stone which bore the image of a fish, and no ordinary fish. This was one that apparently predated human existence. So, who made the image? In the doctor's view, this was evidence that aliens had possibly created these depictions, or humanity was older than originally thought. This self-appointed expert who wasn't trained in archaeology left behind a bunch of these intriguing stones named after the Peruvian province of Ica. Safe to say, not everyone was convinced. The stone-based images of surgery, adult content, and dinosaurs, yes, dinosaurs, that Dr. Darquea went on to collect are fascinating. Many would bet the farm on the fact that it's all made up though. Forget manspreading, the Earth is making space for itself too. As heat makes its way towards the surface from the mantle layer, it builds up near the mid-ocean ridges where tectonic plates meet. This cracks the crust. Just imagine the top of a pie splitting open and cheese bubbling up to the surface. Then, as it's quickly cooled by seawater, a new layer of crust is created, spreading out the floor of the sea. Arsenic naturally occurs in minerals, but we've also put it to use in pesticides, car batteries, and industrial materials. Unfortunately, it's better known as history's favorite poison, because it's almost impossible to trace and terrifyingly effective. In small amounts, it can cause jaundice, rashes, and nausea. A higher dose, and, well, things get lethal. Violent vomiting, convulsions, coma, and organ failure, sometimes in just a few hours. The most worrying fact about arsenic is that almost 140 million people across 70 countries are at risk of arsenic poisoning from contaminated water today. So for millions of people, arsenic poisoning is their reality. Let's look at another one of the classics. Imagine a prehistoric creature that looked like it was designed by a child who was doodling during math class. Yeah, that's exactly what a zipper-mouth lizard looks like. This creature lived in the seas of China around 247 million years ago. These hideous-looking reptiles were up to 3 meters long, had a skull shaped like a hammerhead, and rows of sharp, chisel-like teeth that were crammed together so tightly they looked like a zipper. Despite looking like a Frankenstein mix of a hammerhead shark and a Hoover vacuum, this guy had a special place in history. Instead of going after other sea creatures, this fellow loved himself a good salad bar and is known as the earliest marine reptile herbivore. On top of that, he loved himself a good dental cleaning. Scientists believe it would press its zipper face against rocks to clean the algae off its teeth. A vegetarian who has good hygiene? Why not? I'm sure you've heard of the big stone heads of Easter Island, but what about the stone head of Guatemala in Central America? The country hosts this striking-looking Caucasian countenance in its jungle to the south. These features certainly don't appear to be local, given the history of the area. With its eyes closed and nose aimed at the sky, you can't help but marvel at the detail and the work that must have gone into creating it. Apart from the fact it was discovered over 100 years ago, we don't know much about the head. Its presence was unveiled to the world by Dr. Oscar Rafael Padilla, who was notified decades after explorers documented it. There's no evidence to say this is actually an ancient feature, but there's nothing to say that it isn't either. Where can you find the longest mountain range in the world? If you're thinking of the Andes, Rocky Mountains, or the Himalayas, I'm sorry, but 1, you're wrong, and 2, you just completely ignore the titles of these items. Don't feel bad though. Usually you'd be right. The Andes stretch about 4,300 miles long and are often listed as the longest mountain range. However, the mid-ocean ridge is almost 10 times that length, measuring just over 40,000 miles. It runs through the Atlantic Ocean, the Indian Ocean, Pacific, and zigzags its way across the planet. The reason we don't think of it is that nearly all of it is underwater, but it's responsible for almost all of the volcanic activity on the surface. Cyanide works fast. So fast that it's been used by spies in the event they get caught, assassinations, and even warfare. It usually comes in the form of a colorless gas or a white powder, and once it's in your system, your body loses its ability to use oxygen. Breathing becomes impossible, your head spins, nausea kicks in, and then, game over, sometimes in mere minutes. This one has a reputation for a reason. Speaking of poisons with a long and tainted history, as it turns out, Ariel wasn't the first fish to look at land and think, yeah, that's the life I want to live. Before her, there was the fishapod. This fish lived around 375 million years ago and is famously thought of as the missing link between fish and land animals. This fish had scales and fins, but it also had a flat crocodile-style head with eyes on top and a neck that could move, a sturdy rib cage that made breathing easier, and bones in its fins that resembled arms, forearms, and wrists. If it wanted to, it could do push-ups on land. Walking, though, well, that's debatable. The hauling itself on land and prop its body to explore swampy environments, it wasn't walking the way we walk. Discovered by Neil Shubin and his team in 2004 and introduced to the world in 2006, this massive breakthrough changed the way we looked at evolution and proved how life made the leap from water to land. In a way, we owe these large freshwater weirdos for our daily walks and our awkward dance moves. We're off to colder climates now, in the area of Skara Brae. This Neolithic village, which features stuff like beds and even a toilet, is in the Orkney Islands in Scotland. The most mysterious thing about it is this. What happened to the people? Experts believe the Stone Age village was abandoned in mysterious circumstances, circa 2500 BCE. Who discovered it? Well, nature played a big role here. It's stated that in the mid-19th century a storm blew away a dune. Beneath it was the village of Skara Brae. The magnetic field is not equal all around the world. Instead, it bends and strengthens, making it stronger or weaker depending on where you are. For example, the Bangui anomaly in the Central African Republic has more intense magnetic activity than almost anywhere else on the planet. These are generated by magnetic minerals found deep in Earth's crust. We are able to pick up on these forces through magnetometers, finely tuned devices that analyze minute protons to detect differences in the magnetic field. Compound 1080 sounds like something from Dexter's Laboratory, but it's actually one of the deadliest poisons we've ever used to kill rodents. It's a white, odorless, tasteless powder that dissolves in water, making it incredibly easy to consume without realizing it. And once it's in your system, there is no way out. It shuts down energy production in the body, causing seizures, irregular heartbeats, and eventually respiratory failure. And if that weren't bad enough, there's no antidote. Even if another animal eats a poisoned one, the toxin stays in their system and can kill them too. Up next, a poison so deadly it can kill billions. And yet, people still inject it into their faces. Have you ever wondered what the largest flying animal in history was? As far as we know, it was the Quetzalcoatlus, or giant pterosaur. This 66-million-year-old creature is thought to have lived near the end of the dinosaur age. These enormous birds were the size of a plane with a wingspan of about 33 feet and as tall as a giraffe. Did it actually fly, though? Well, that's debatable. Some scientists believe it flew like an albatross, while others theorize it rocked forward like a vampire bat. Others, though, don't believe it actually flew at all. The newest research has it leaping 8 feet into the air before using its wings to glide into flight. This feathered skyscraper was a predator without teeth. It used its beak to snatch up small animals on land and would steal fish from lakes and rivers to feast upon. Another incredible jungle discovery was the ancient city of Angkor in Cambodia. This pre-industrial hub is said to have housed approximately 1 million people. It also utilized water as a power source. It's well preserved, though that doesn't make it any less of a mystery. This is highlighted by the fact that we aren't clear on why the place went from being a mighty urban center to being deserted and overtaken by the natural world. When giants collide, they make a big impact. And there are a few bigger forces than tectonic plates. Some are bigger than others, though. Oceanic plates weigh more than continental ones, and as they crash into each other, the heavier plate slides downward and creates something called a subduction zone. This connects the mantle layer to the continental crust, creating huge volcanoes, ultra-deep trenches, and devastating earthquakes. Botulinum toxin, better known as Botox, is the most toxic substance on Earth. It's produced by Clostridium botulinum, a bacteria that can be found in soil, water, plants, and even the intestines of animals. Yes, intestines, ladies. So how do people use it for beauty treatments without instantly dropping dead? Well, the answer to that is in super tiny doses. But should you happen to be exposed to too much, blurred vision, nausea, a heart attack, full body paralysis. Strangely enough, it's not the only poison that hides behind beauty. 390 million years ago, there was a scorpion on Earth more terrifying than the ones playing in the desert, just waiting to crawl into your boot and sting your toes. This one could have practically eaten you whole. The giant sea scorpion could grow to over 9 feet long and is on record as the largest arthropod ever discovered. This gigantic creepy crawler of the ancient seas is truly nightmare fuel. With a body that had a segmented exoskeleton made to look like armor plating, and huge pinchers, this monster would propel through coastal waters with its paddle-like limbs and search for prey with zero competition. Scientists believe its size is attributed to the oxygen levels in the water and atmosphere being higher at the time than it is now. Is it a good thing we have less oxygen now? Well, probably not, but at least we don't have to be afraid of a ginormous scorpion attacking us, so there's that. These aren't ancient kites, but they are connected to the air, by which I mean that they've been spotted from high above by humans flying over the Middle Eastern desert. The pilots observed a sight that resembled the image of a kite, hence the name. There were humans down there, of course, who made the low stone walls that have puzzled experts over the decades. We've known about the walls since the early 20th century. The country-spanning structures run on for some 40 miles. By the 21st century, a theory had been developed, saying that the walls function as animal traps. The unfortunate prey would come up against the barriers and be directed to some kind of slaughter pit. This makes sense, but as with any of the entries on our rundown, the jury is still out. Maybe we'll never know for sure. Earthquakes are one of the most dangerous natural disasters humans encounter. One earthquake in the 16th century led to over 800,000 deaths. That's why predicting when the next one is coming is such an important area of research. Unfortunately, because of the complex processes involved, a concrete method still hasn't been developed that's consistent. However, seismologists who study earthquakes have developed models to come up with some probabilities by calculating the motion of each tectonic plate and what are called fault slips. Now, the use of artificial intelligence is looking even more promising, with one test predicting 70% of earthquakes in China. If you've ever watched a wildlife documentary about the Amazon, you'll be familiar with the tiny, neon-colored poison dart frogs. These minuscule frogs are coated in batrachotoxin, one of the strongest neurotoxins on the planet. Native American hunters have been using it for centuries, rubbing their blow darts on the frog's skin, because a dose as small as 2 grains of salt can kill almost instantly. The toxin overloads nerve cells, forcing them to fire non-stop until the body completely shuts down. Convulsions hit first, then paralysis, then heart failure. Moving on. Who would have thought coral could be poisonous? For something we can all enjoy. Meet the spikeback shark. This prehistoric fish has a great sense of humor. Swimming into the history books 360 million years ago, this tiny guy only grew to about 3 feet long and sported an anvil-shaped dorsal fin covered in tiny spines. Picture a shark with a built-in ironing board on its back and you'll get the idea. What's up with that weird fin? Scientists' best guess is that it likely had a few tricks up its sleeve. Was it used to attract mates? Maybe. Intimidate rivals? Possibly. Was it awkward-looking camouflage? Perhaps. Could it have been just a weird biological fashion statement? Probably. Pair that fin with its strange teeth and you got a mini monster ready to scare modern-day researchers. Their chompers aren't like sharks today. They weren't designed for crunching shells or anything hard. They were more like tiny spears lining its jaw and arranged in a slightly curved pattern, which helped it snag some soft and slimy prey. They weren't the fastest. They weren't the best predators. And they definitely weren't the best swimmers. But this weird fish with a fin certainly was packed with personality. On an island in Malta, which goes by the brilliant name of Gozo, there stands a collection of megaliths. They're made of limestone, and the biggest are around 20 feet high. Experts are reportedly surprised at how such a substantial construction was created by ancient peoples. There is some debate over who actually built the Gigantea temples, however. At an age of well over 5,000 years, they passed the mysteriousness test. Though it's pretty bizarre to think that the stones are attributed to a group of giants. Big ideas need big people, I guess. We can't jump into a time machine and find out who exactly built these amazing structures or left behind such amazing artifacts. Yet there are things we find that give an idea of who the people were and what they did. Sometimes, of course, this evidence is very baffling and bizarre. It only serves to deepen the mystery. Okay, I've talked about the mid-ocean ridges, subduction zones, and earthquakes. But what about the plate tectonic boundaries at the center of them all? Well, they come in 3 different kinds: divergent, convergent, and transform plate boundaries. Divergent plate boundaries move away from each other. Convergent boundaries clash into one another, while transform plate boundaries happen when two move past each other, creating fault lines and making earthquakes much more likely. Polythiol corals produce palytoxin, one of the most toxic non-protein substances on Earth. It messes with your cells at a molecular level, turning your sodium-potassium pumps into open pores, which is a fancy way of saying your body starts to destroy itself from the inside out. And here's the scary part. You don't even have to touch it. Divers, snorkelers, and people working in aquariums can all be exposed to the vapors. And while hospitals can provide supportive care to keep you alive while your body tries to fight off the effects, well, there's no antidote either. Now, let's look at the most lethal natural toxin by weight. Have you ever heard of the Elvis dinosaur? This was the dinosaur that proves that even 190 million years ago, evolution had a flair for style. This Antarctic dweller was discovered in 1991 by William R. Hammer, and while it marked the first carnivorous dinosaur found in the area, everyone promptly noticed the resemblance to the King of Rock, Elvis Presley. This dude was around 23 feet long, the dinosaur, not Elvis, making it one of the largest predators of its time. And it was a prehistoric fashionista with its dramatic pompadour-shaped crest. So good, Elvis would be asking for styling tips. Think a T-Rex with a rock star hairdo. It didn't just eat prey. It probably gave them a wink and a hair flip first. They were first heard about by modern-day ears in 1929, with the story fleshed out over half a century later. The Sanxingdui culture lived in China approximately 3,000 years ago. They left behind striking artifacts made from jade, stone, and bronze, among other material. The Sanxingdui departed from their home for some reason, but interestingly buried many of their wonders in pits. This extraordinary-looking head is just one example of their work. A particularly cool detail about the archaeology is that the initial finds were made by a sewage worker. A dirty job for sure, yet it goes to show that you don't have to be a big-time professor to strike it lucky with a stunning discovery. Approximately 15% of the Earth's sedimentary rocks are limestone, which is used for cement, roads, and even paint. You might be surprised to know that chalk is a kind of limestone too. And just like chalk, on some limestone rock faces, the inside can be dissolved when water trickles in. This leads to environments known as karst landscapes, like the huge sinkholes, like the cenotes of the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. In other parts of the world, like in the stone forest of China, rocks stand up tall from the ground, shaped by the water. You wouldn't think a toxin from plankton could be one of the deadliest substances on Earth, but, well, here we are. Mycotoxin is the most lethal natural toxin by weight, and it doesn't take much to be fatal, just a few micrograms. It floods your heart with calcium and throws everything out of rhythm. The result? Arrhythmias, cardiac arrest, and total system failure. So far, I've talked about poisons in the ocean, the jungle, and even the odd beauty treatments. But what about one you could accidentally be growing in your own backyard? Want to learn about a cannibal dinosaur? Sure you do. That's exactly what we believe the Madagascar killer dinosaur was. These big freaks lived about 70 million years ago and were not afraid of going hungry. They not only munched on smaller ancient lizards, but also used their own kind as dino nuggets. Yes, we know this, and yes, we know this for sure because fossilized bones show bite marks that match their own teeth, making it one of the very few dinosaurs that ate their own kind. Well, doesn't that take family recipes to another level? They weren't just not so picky eaters. They were a top predator in their ecosystem. They were as big as 23 feet long with a short, stout, bulldog-looking skull that made it look a little funny, but those jaws were deadly serious. This highly intriguing Upper Paleolithic burial is believed to have taken place an astonishing 34,000 years ago. A pair of children were laid to rest as part of a hunter-gatherer community at the Sungurits site in Russia. The two males appeared to have been buried in ceremonial fashion, with adornments, including spears and fox teeth. A particularly fascinating thing is that the children displayed evidence of disabilities. Their identities are unknown, but given the nature of the burial, they were surely important members of the group. Geodes are a kind of volcanic rock that looks pretty empty at first glance, but inside, something magical grows. Crystals. They're called geodes and are formed by the abundance of minerals located underneath volcanic ground, from fresh water or even mud. These minerals spend thousands of years growing into stunning, colorful crystals. Ricin comes from castor beans, a plant that looks totally harmless, but just a tiny amount of this poison can shut your body down fast. It works by blocking your cells from making proteins, which means your organs slowly start failing one by one. The symptoms start with fever, vomiting, and stomach pain, but things go downhill quickly. Seizures, organ failure, and death within days, which is probably why assassins love it so much. One of the most famous cases was the assassination of Yuri Markov, a Bulgarian dissident who was injected with a ricin-laced pellet using a modified umbrella. He died 3 days later. Ricin has also turned up in everything from poison-laced letters sent to US presidents to real-life copycats inspired by Breaking Bad. So nature really outdid itself with this one. Now, would you believe me if I told you that ricin has an even deadlier cousin? 48 million years ago, there was once a type of whale that didn't lock itself down to life in the ocean. It often visited land too. This fella had a long crocodile-like body, webbed feet, and tail that was built for swimming. Not only was it a master of the water, but it loved sneaking over to the shores to snatch prey right off the shoreline, by getting out of the water like a modern-day crocodile. This real multitasker could do it all, and gave us some fantastic insight into the evolution of whales and how the species in modern times truly came to be. Nowadays, if you see a whale out of water, it incites mass panic, as beachgoers band together to try and drag it back out to sea to save its life. Back then, though, this habitat hopper was happy basically anywhere. If it had a dating profile on Hinge, it would read, half whale, half croc, 100% weird. Is there anything more unnerving and bizarre than a dried out old mummy? What about a dried out old mummy with his face captured in what appears to be a scream? It's the stuff of nightmares and was uncovered in the late 19th century. And by uncovered, I mean literally. The ancient Egyptian find had to be demummified to give experts a chance to see who the individual was. They may have wished that they hadn't interfered with those bandages once they laid eyes on that face. Yikes. You know that mind-blowing scene in Inception where the city streets fold back on one another? Well, a similar thing happens in the real world. And it all comes down to, you guessed it, tectonic plates. Is there anything they can't do? I mean, probably, if I'm being honest. Anyway, we know that as these push up against one another, they create mountainous regions, but sometimes these actually fold back on one another. When this happens, it's actually the Earth's crust folding too. Fold mountains can be found in the Himalayas and the Alps. In the Windhauser Schafberg of Switzerland, you can see the waves of the fold that formed over millions of years. Abrin is the toxin you can find inside rosary pea seeds, those tiny bright red beads often used in jewelry. They look harmless, but if even one seed is chewed or broken open, you are in serious trouble. Like ricin, abrin blocks protein production, which means your organs slowly start shutting down. But, and here's the shocker, it's over 30 times more potent than ricin. Symptoms hit hard. Fever, vomiting, massive organ failure, and death within days. Fantastic. Just a fresh new fear was just unlocked. Great. In 1886, British fossil collector Alfred Leeds came across a stunning find when he happened upon the largest bony fish in history. Little did he know, this was the remnants of an enormous 52-foot-long Jurassic fish that lived around 165 million years ago. It's not just the size of this sea monster that makes it special. These fish were plankton eaters and used special gill rakers to filter tiny organisms from the water. Named for its finder, the Leeds megafish closely resembles a whale, but with fins instead of flippers. While it wasn't a danger to the other marine animals around it, imagine how scared the plankton were when they saw that polite diner coming. With its massive size, it would require a plankton buffet the size of a city block to feel satisfied. The image of an ancient Neanderthal with his thick-set features and caveman-like behavior is well established. Did you know, however, that some of these people ate each other? This doesn't seem to happen across the board, though, with evidence of cannibalism noted in some locations but not others. One example was found in a Belgian cave, where human bones that clearly belonged to a murder victim brought a new perspective to the Neanderthal's primal reputation. Not only were the cave dwellers cannibals, they also reportedly used the bone marrow, as well as fashioning tools from the leftover skeleton. It's easy to forget the power of water. And I don't mean tsunamis, whirlpools, or torrential rain. The simple stream of a river makes permanent changes to its environment. To get a little fancy though, scientists use the Latin word for river, fluvius. Coming from high up in the mountaintops, water rapidly falls down through the headwater zone to the transfer zone, where valleys are indented in the terrain, downwards until eventually it evacuates into the sea. Dimethylmercury is a highly toxic liquid that doesn't sting, burn, or tingle when it touches your skin. It just seeps right through whatever you thought would protect you. Even latex gloves won't stop it. And once it's inside, you won't feel a thing until months later. By the time symptoms start, slurred speech, vision loss, and loss of motor control, it's already too late. One of the most infamous cases of dimethylmercury poisoning happened in 1996 when Karen Wetterhan, a chemistry professor at Dartmouth College, accidentally spilled a few drops on her gloved hand. 5 months later, she developed severe neurological symptoms and fell into a coma. Despite treatment, she died within a year. Alright, now let's talk about a nerve agent so deadly that even a drop can be fatal. Way back in 1889, paleontologist John Strong Newberry came across a wild discovery when he unearthed a strange fossil that would later be dubbed the paleoshark. This torpedo-shaped fishy find from North America preserved so many details, scientists were able to not only see its cartilaginous skeleton, but even hints of soft tissue. With strong jaws and multi-cusped teeth and a smooth, scaleless body, this ocean predator may not be one of the biggest, thought to only be around 3 to 6 feet long, but it was tough. It was able to bite into the great whites and use its fin spines to keep its own predators at bay. The paleoshark was the ancient ocean's sneaky ninja. A shark that wasn't the size of a bus, but built for intimidation and speed. A surprise attack left the inhabitants of a 5th century Swedish community dead and undiscovered till centuries later. Sandbyborg is an Iron Age ring fort, as in an ancient settlement arranged in a circular pattern. The unfortunate victims were brutally slaughtered, though no one is sure why the massacre took place. This is an interesting example of an archaeological find that, in one way, is very specific, and in another, a bizarre puzzle. The area is quite familiar, and we have an idea about the people. What we don't know is why their lives ended so violently. Now, I promised you a list of bizarre things, and the stories have been quite bizarre so far. That said, it's time to turn full-blown historical weirdo. This next section of the video features one eye-popping discovery after another. The word estuary might sound unfamiliar, but how about a bay or a lagoon? These are both estuaries. All it means is a place bridging fresh water and the ocean. They form when sea levels rise, the earth sinks, or when glaciers cave in and leave space for water to flow. Estuaries are vital for a ton of different species, especially fish. On a more basic level, the passage of streams filters harmful sediments and makes water cleaner for everyone. VX was originally developed as a pesticide, but it was so toxic that using it in agriculture was out of the question. Instead, it became one of the deadliest chemical weapons ever used. It hijacks the nervous system, causing uncontrollable muscle contractions, convulsions, and suffocation. And just like ricin, it's been used in a high-profile assassination. In 2017, Kim Jong-nam, the half-brother of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, was murdered with VX in the middle of an airport. 2 women approached him, wiped a tiny amount of VX on his face, and walked away. Within 20 minutes, he collapsed. By the time doctors realized what had happened, there was nothing they could do. But there's another nerve agent that works even faster, and just breathing it can be fatal. A lizard called a king lizard that's not actually a lizard at all? Yes, that existed. This creature lived about 41 million years ago, and despite its name, it's actually a giant prehistoric whale. What a way to give a guy an identity crisis. To be fair, scientists originally thought it was some kind of massive reptile because it doesn't exactly give off whale vibes. The king lizard doesn't look anything like the whales we know today. With its snake-like shape, it looks more like a sea serpent that could grow up to 60 feet long. A humongous eel with flippers, if you will. Weird, right? What's even weirder is that it had teeny tiny, useless back legs. Why? We don't know. It's almost like they were leftover body parts with zero function. Nevertheless, it's thought to be one of the biggest underwater bullies of its time. It relied on its size, speed, and powerful jaw full of strange, rigid teeth to take down its prey. These perfectly formed spherical oddities are found in the Central American jungle. The smallest is several inches, and the biggest is far greater than that. Authority figures in ancient Costa Rica, or the territory which became Costa Rica, would have the spheres arranged in lines on the approach to their houses. Some of the balls were 7 feet in diameter. The bigger the balls, the higher the power? Who knows? I dread to think. We can see they're made of gabbro rock, limestone, and sandstone. For such a distinctive looking thing, they're definitely shrouded in mystery. Really? The bigger the balls, the bigger the power? Really? Some of the most picturesque parts of places like Canada, Norway, or Greenland are called fjords. These are where tall cliff faces tower over a relatively thin body of water called an inlet. Their origin dates back to ancient movements of ice, when glaciers create deep impressions in the land before melting and allowing water to flood back in. Fjords can be incredibly deep too. So deep, in fact, that there are cold water coral reefs hidden underneath, just like the kinds found in the tropics. Only a lot colder, as the name suggests. Maybe don't go swimming there. Unless you're, have all the proper gear. VX and sarin are both nerve agents, but while VX sticks around as an oily residue, sarin vanishes into thin air. And that's exactly why it's so dangerous. Sarin is a gas, meaning just one breath can be enough to kill you. It shuts down your body's ability to control nerve signals, causing convulsions, muscle paralysis, and suffocation within minutes. Remember the Tokyo subway attack in 1995? 13 people died, over 1,000 were injured, and the world realized just how terrifying this nerve gas can be. But leave it to the Cold War to introduce something even deadlier. Let's dive into the strangest reptiles to ever slither across the Triassic world. This one is dubbed the giraffe neck reptile because its 13 super stretched vertebrae neck was so ridiculously long, it was actually longer than the rest of its body. This beast was so weird that at first scientists thought the fossils were pieces of flying reptiles or some sort of crocodile tail. Nope. This ridiculously designed creature used its giraffe neck to snatch up fish and squid without having to move its body at all. It was basically a fishing pole with teeth. These monsters lived about 242 million years ago and hung out around Europe, Asia, and North America. It wasn't a dinosaur per se, but is actually thought to be a creature that has since given rise to crocs, birds, and dinos. Again, the creature is not the shoes. I mentioned Loki earlier. Now it's time for another character from a blockbuster franchise. This time, hobbits. Not the creatures from Middle-earth as such, but an ancient collection of skeletons, which belong to a small group of human ancestors called Homo floresiensis. Crazily, we didn't know about these little people until 2003 when they were discovered on Flores, an island in Indonesia. This find broadened the scope of human development, though it didn't offer much in the way of explanation. They fit in somewhere, but where? Apparently they lived on the island around 100,000 years back, and yes, like Tolkien's hobbits, they had short legs and big feet. But were they hairy feet? Permafrost is ground that can stay frozen even when the temperatures rise again. That's because it's a mixture of rocks, sand, and other sediment stuck with pieces of ice. Often you can't see permafrost because it's hidden underneath a layer of regular soil. Despite its name though, it's not really permanent. Climate change is thawing it, like we've never seen before. As this happens, carbon dioxide from the soil is released into the air. The problem is even more immediate for some places, especially in towns located in the far north of the world, where structures are often built on top of permafrost. As it melts, it'll take down anything above. Novichok isn't just a single chemical. It's an entire family of nerve agents made in secret Soviet labs, each one formulated to be deadlier than VX. Some versions are 5 to 8 times stronger. And in case that wasn't enough to scare you, you should know that even a microscopic dose can trigger pinpoint pupils, seizures, and a total nervous system meltdown. That danger was demonstrated in 2018 when Sergei and Yulia Skripal were poisoned, and in 2020 when Alexei Navalny was poisoned. They survived, but only after intense medical intervention. Okay, let's take a break from invisible killers and look at an Australian one. Now for something truly bizarre. Meet the Saccharidus coronarius. This weirdo had a huge mouth, no anus, and had the honor of being our earliest ancestor. Yeah, I said what I said. These monsters lived about 540 million years ago when life on Earth was just starting to get creative. And by creative, I mean the world was designing the wildest and weirdest things we can even imagine, and these definitely fit that bill. The Saccharidus resembles a living stress ball with one giant hole in the middle. It's thought to live off tiny organic bits off the ocean floor, but without an exit hole, everything that went in its mouth came back out the same way. Sounds fun. Remember that South Park episode where they were all pooping out of their mouths? Yeah, this fella actually lived that life. What makes this even stranger is that it's thought to be one of the earliest deuterostomes, and that makes it an ancient relative of vertebrates such as birds, whales, and even us. Yep, your great-great-great-great-great-grandsack was a tiny mouth with no bum. Think about that the next time you complain about your family tree. While it looks like something your vacuum cleaner coughs up, it's truly a huge deal in the story of evolution. The crystal skulls aren't just a plot device in an Indiana Jones movie. Indy's adventure was based on a very real example of bizarre archaeology. Made from quartz, they're associated with ancient Mesoamerica. These powerful civilizations, which included the Aztecs, were brought down by the Spanish in the 16th century and occupied Mexico and Central America. They carved the crystal skulls for a meaningful purpose, I'm sure. The skulls are impressive and more than a little scary. What was in the minds of these people who made them, however, is something we have little to no idea about. The waters covering our planet's surface are not all livable. In dead zones, excess of things like nitrogen help to grow dangerous organisms. That reduces the amount of oxygen in the water, meaning that other organisms that usually live there can't survive. Just like us, most organisms depend on oxygen. Like a lot of the problems we face at the moment, humans are mostly to blame. Certain fertilizers and chemicals make their way into the oceans and create dead zones, mainly on coastlines. We all know Australia is home to plenty of deadly critters, but the inland taipan might just be the undisputed champ. 1 milligram of its venom can kill a grown adult, and it can deliver up to 100 milligrams in a single bite. Get the picture? Each strike is loaded with neurotoxins, hemotoxins, and myotoxins, a triple whammy that can lead to paralysis, massive internal bleeding, and respiratory failure, sometimes within minutes. The good news is that this snake is shy and sticks to remote areas. Otherwise, there'd be a whole lot more horror stories coming out of the outback. Alright, I think I've covered enough animals. Ready to move from venom to radiation? Trust me, it only gets scarier. Our next truly mysterious creature is the alien goldfish. That sounds adorable and kind of terrifying, and it was. These tiny soft-bodied fish-like beings swam across the oceans around 330 million years ago and are thought to have settled mostly around North America. At first glance at its fossils, they look like tiny fish, but scientists have no idea what it actually was. The weirdest part of these guys was its huge mouth. It was thought to eat tiny eel-like animals called conodonts. Even stranger was that it had a tooth ribbon in its stomach, which was like a tiny comb used to grab onto food. This places them less in the fish category and more into the group of snails and squid. Small, weird, and kinda gross, the tiny alien-looking snack machine shows how strange early sea life could get. What was an arm doing at the bottom of an ancient Roman well in Northamptonshire, England? Located at an industrial estate of all places, the 2,000-year-old arm was fashioned from a tree branch and was very well preserved. Is the arm, thought to belong to a wooden body long since lost, evidence of an offering to the Roman gods? It took until 2019 for the bizarre discovery to be made, and I'm sure it'll have experts' brains hurting for years to come. Ever had that feeling in a pool where you get a rush of cool water? Well, in nature, there's a word for that. It's called upwelling. It happens when the force of winds is working to blow ocean water away from the coast. As this water is displaced, other water has to fill its place, which comes from deep down below, and it's much colder. This effect does much more than give swimmers a rush of cold on their body. Upwelling also brings much needed nutrients higher up, helping to make the water more habitable for organisms. Polonium-210 is a rare radioactive metal that's so potent that billionths of a gram can be lethal. Once inside the body, it bombards your organs with alpha radiation, causing acute radiation syndrome and multi-organ failure. One of the most notorious cases of polonium poisoning happened in 2006 when the ex-Russian spy Alexander Litvinenko was poisoned in London. He died after weeks of agonizing decline, and there was nothing doctors could do. In short, polonium is radioactivity at its worst, and there's almost no surviving it, should you even want to. In today's world, we have leatherback turtles that can grow to 9 feet and weigh up to 2,000 pounds. That's nothing compared to 80 million years ago. Back then, there were Archelon turtles that could grow up to 15 feet with flippers that stretched over 13 feet wide. What makes them even more unique is that they didn't have a hard, bony shell like our turtles do today. Instead, they were covered in a leathery, rigid carapace and were supported by a lightweight skeleton. Big and beautiful, these turtles had powerful beak-like jaws that were ready to chomp down on shellfish, squid, and anything else that wasn't fast enough to get away. This guy was the size of a small car, could glide gracefully through the seas, and prove that during prehistoric times, the motto was definitely bigger is better. You don't necessarily need a construction crew to build a nuclear reactor. It can all happen thanks to Mother Nature. How do we know this incredible fact? We have archaeology in the ancient world to thank. Located by modern-day experts in a West African mine, this reactor developed without any interference from humans. In fact, it predates our species by some time. The Oklo mine reactor is thought to be around 2 billion years old. How on earth did it work? It began generating thermal power through a combination of clay and uranium minerals that found themselves mixed together. Floodwater then dissolved the minerals and took them down underground into the water supply. Algae absorbed the uranium. Because there were so many uranium-rich algae, it resulted in a critical mass, and then a chain reaction. Neutrons and atoms did their thing, and the rest is history. Now, I can't give you a comprehensive overview of how a modern nuclear reactor works. We would be here for a while. It's enough to simply sit there and gawp at the idea that such a thing can exist without a single inanimate carbon rod in sight. Surely there's an explanation, but is it really possible? I think this story is mind-blowing and almost unbelievable. How old is the air that we, breathe? The answer is likely around 2.4 billion years. That's when photosynthesis kicks into gear, which turns light from the sun to energy like oxygen. This moment is known as the Great Oxidation Event, but it's not the only way that oxygen is formed. It can also emerge from deep below the Earth's surface, where something called hydrogen peroxide is created. As we learn more about the mysterious forces closer to the center of our planet, it looks like many of the elements we rely on, like oxygen and water, could have been created in the raging inferno down below, much earlier than on the surface. Let's talk about carfentanil, an opioid so strong it's used to tranquilize elephants, and yet it's still finding ways onto the streets. This stuff is about 100 times more potent than fentanyl, and 10,000 times stronger than morphine. I'm talking 20 micrograms, just a few grains of salt, being enough to kill an adult who has no opioid tolerance. It depresses your central nervous system so fast that respiratory arrest can happen before you even know something's wrong. And yes, carfentanil has been weaponized, notably in the 2002 Moscow theater siege, which left over 100 hostages dead. It's also fueling fatal overdoses in the opioid crisis. So while there is an antidote, Naxalone, the sheer potency of carfentanil is such that it often demands multiple doses and an immediate response to even stand a chance. All of that makes carfentanil one of the most unforgiving substances on Earth. A single speck can end a life in minutes. For our final monster, we're checking out the spaceship-shaped predator called Titanosaurus genesee. These ancient sea creatures lived about 500 million years ago and were truly the T-Rex of their time. This monster was tiny for the period, only growing up to 7 inches long, but despite its size, it packed quite the punch. This stealthy alien cruiser was full of spiny rake-like arms, a circular tooth-lined mouth, and sported a helmet-like carapace that covered not only its head, but most of its body. It would grab, crush, and gobble dinner all while looking like a UFO. These little beasts were the sharks of their time, just with way stranger bodies. And that's all I got for you today.